what is the difference between a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist, and does one have to first go to a therapist, then a psychologist, then a psychiatrist? How do we know the difference between all this for a layman?
Let me take a step further back.
Ji.
Let's see what are mental health needs, what are mental health problems, and what are mental illnesses. Because people confuse that. There is a lot of talk about mental health, but people don't know what is mental health. So mental health is a search for a journey for one's dignity, having a purposeful life, having a life with a sense of belonging, having a life with a sense of control over oneself, and having experiences which nurture these factors. Right? So all of us have mental health needs. But all of us are not able to fulfill our mental health needs because all of us are pushed away from these goals to suffering, sometimes lack of dignity, sometimes experiences of isolation, sometimes sometimes experiences of powerlessness and helplessness. And these are everyday experiences that we have. So it's a journey. And it is a journey that we can facilitate for ourselves. So mental health is necessary for everyone, not just for a few people who are unwell. Then there are people who live in circumstances which can create mental health problems. For example, there will be students who are trying to prepare for exams. There would be people who face COVID. There would be people who have had other difficult circumstances, may have experienced violence or abuse in their lives. There might be people who are facing, in the sociological context, discrimination. So there would be a number of things that could precipitate mental health problems. These mental health problems would reflect themselves in processes of thinking, processes of feeling, the way we think, the way we feel, the way we act out, the way we relate to people. So, but they do not amount to a diagnosis of a disorder. Then there'll be some disorders which are specifically defined. This ये cluster of symptoms होगा तो ये disorder होगा, right? Anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar mood disorder. So there are about 200 such disorders. People, club mental illnesses as one and then stigmatize them. So what I'm trying to say is that mental health needs सबकी हैं, mental health problems सबको होती हैं, vulnerabilities varying degrees. Circumstances, difficult circumstances सबको होते हैं. Sometimes when stress, vulnerability come together, biological vulnerability, sociological vulnerability, psychological vulnerability, when they all come together, it may come through as a disorder. Now when it comes through as a disorder, so mental health needs for everyone, mental health problems, 40 to 60% people in a population might have mental health problems at any given point of time, which do not amount to a diagnosis of disorder. Then there will be between 1 to 5 to 1 to 8 people in a population who have mental health disorders. It's a huge number. I give a range because some surveys will say 1 in 5, some surveys will say 1 in 8, some surveys will call...
You're talking about India or global?
I'm talking about global and India. There's a survey in India which says 10% people, 11% people have mental health disorders, which does not include alcohol and smoking. If you include that, the number rises to 22%. So it's as huge as that.
You're talking about millions, that means.
You're talking about millions. And then most of people do not get help. So these distinctions of psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, counselors are distinctions that happen largely on Twitter or X or, in our middle class conversation where there is some access to services. 70%, 80% people do not have any access to services and are reliant on local cultural, subcultural methods of seeking support, families providing support, the illness being festered for a very long time because of stigma, because no help is available, because the general practitioner may not, even if they diagnose it, they might treat it inadequately. So a psychiatrist is a medical doctor trained in a specialization of psychiatry, has done MD in psychiatry, or further qualified in DM, super specialized after that, and they diagnose, assess, treat, and monitor the treatment of psychiatric disorders. But they also, because the mental health needs are so high, they also fulfill needs of people who have mental health problems as well. They work both through medicines, neuromodulation, like magnetic stimulation of the brain, or through psychological treatments. So psychiatrists could be trained in psychological therapies as well.
Okay.
Then there are people who provide only talking cures. Right? They do not prescribe medicines. Out of these, the words that you'll find is psychologists, therapists, counselors, coaches. So there will be a number of range of people who are providing, and self-styled gurus.
Yes.
So and they actually
the gurus used to be the traditional people that families took their problem child to or whatever.
Even today, I think the subcultural method of dealing with mental health needs is being fulfilled more by the non-mental health professionals than the mental health professionals, because there's more faith, more trust. The vocabulary matches, the narrative matches somehow. And because the narrative matches, you seek out help from people whom you traditionally have used to seek out help for. Unfortunately, what that does is that sometimes it delays the seeking of help if there's a disorder. So a psychologist is trained in the science of working on looking at patterns of behaviors, feelings, and thoughts, and helping people recognize those patterns through various methods by forming a therapeutic relationship and helping them learn different ways of addressing, either acknowledging, accepting those patterns, feelings, and thoughts, or helping them learn methods of adapting to them or changing those patterns.
You bring a very important point: accepting and acknowledging that
and adapting and changing. This is not just change. Sometimes the focus on change is so much that we forget that the biggest element of therapy is acceptance. That you accept something is happening which is not helpful for me, and I need to do something about it that I can do something about. I can't wait for the context to change. Because in mental health, there is the person, there is the problem, and there is the context. Sometimes we end up fighting the context so much. And I'm not saying the context is not real. Sometimes the context is as real as you've faced violence for years. And that context needs to change. But you also have to recognize that you're resilient and you can bring about that change.
Click here to watch the full episode.